Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with the WWE Blu-ray release of Destruction of the Shield. The Shield, one of the strongest factions that the WWE has ever really put together. The way that these guys came into WWE and really protected and just untouchable for almost a year and a half before they met their demise is something that's always going to be remembered. I know that a lot of people think that these three guys are going to be a big, bright part of the future for the WWE. Everybody's always looking to see who is going to take over for John Cena and be the ringleader and really, grab that brass ring. A lot of people think that it's going to be Roman Reigns. Coming off of winning the Royal Rumble this year and moving into the future. Seth Rollins running around with that Money in the Bank briefcase, and Dean Ambrose really doesn't have any qualifications yet. He's competed in a Money in the Bank match, and he's been he was the main event of TLC, if that's worth anything. But a lot of people think that he has a lot of things that remind people of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he could be moving into that sort of stardom sooner than later. But these three guys were awesome. I'm really, really excited about this release. I know that the Destruction of the Shield documentary was already ran on the WWE Network, and it still lives there in the on-demand section. They've added a little bit to the documentary to make you want to go out and get this. But honestly, when it comes down to it, I really wanted the matches that went along with it. If you're not a DVD collector, you don't have, or if you're not a pay-per-view DVD collector, you don't have a lot of the Shield matches in an easy sort of grab sort of thing. A lot of this is their rise and demise, their rise through NXT and their domination of the WWE. Even though they were rookies and then meeting their demise and then leading into SummerSlam, which was when this ran on the WWE Network, was right after SummerSlam, them getting ready for this big match. You see Dean Ambrose training out in the desert and all sorts of things like that. With the demise, SummerSlam was headlining by two big matches. Of course, Brock Lesnar versus John Cena was the main event, but Roman Reigns having a big match against Randy Orton, and then you also had Seth Rollins against Dean Ambrose in the Lumberjack match. Was a big one that brought people to the arena that day, and to turn on the WWE Network to make sure that you check this out. This is the Blu-ray release, as you can see here. We'll flip over and we'll look at the back. See that picture there? I have that as an 8x10. Mine's a little bit different. It's almost black and whitish. There's not a lot of color to it, but I was able to get that signed by them when I met them at SummerSlam Access a few years ago. Really glad that I did get that signed, because who knows when you're going to see them together. I know that when they broke up, there was rumors on the dirt sheets basically saying that WWE was going to keep these guys close and reunite them as soon as they could, because of the, them all sort of coming in at the same time and how great the faction was over, that, they could run the Shield over and over in bright spots of the WWE, whether if it's a reunion on Monday Night Raw or them building up to a big three-man, or I guess it'd be six-man tag. You know how I'm talking about here. But the way these guys ran over, Extreme Rules on the same night, which is where I believe this picture is taken. Dean Ambrose wins the United States Championship. I think he beat Kofi Kingston, but I'm not 100% sure. The Shield won the tag titles. I remember they lost to Cody Rhodes and Goldust, but I can't remember who the hell they beat. That was a title that Dean Ambrose very rarely defended, but was holding it for such a long time because the Shield fought in a lot of six-man tags, and you can't put the title on the line there, but you can see there's a lot of words on there. They didn't highlight any matches that made you want to buy this. You're going to be sitting in Best Buy, pick this up, and you're either going to know what you're getting or you're not, but there's that cool picture that I was talking about that I got signed. Mine looks a lot like that, and then here's another one of them, and they're on there. When you look behind disc number 1, you're going to see everything that goes along in the documentary, lots of things there, and then you can see a lot of FCW and NXT matches. I was really late to the party. I really didn't watch any FCW. Very rarely did I watch any NXT when it was on Hulu. I'm sorry, Hulu. It wasn't until it went to the WWE Network, and by that time, these guys were already, long gone. They were on the main roster, but you get to see the matches that they hype up. Dean Ambrose against Seth Rollins in the 15-minute championship matches there for you. More on the Rollins and Dean Ambrose rivalry, and then you get some more rematches. This is one of the reasons that they think NXT was able to get their Hulu deal and not just be a developmental territory that had television on local Florida TV. This is what they basically said, the world needs to see this, and you can go from there. Dean Ambrose going up against William Regal. Seth Rollins winning the NXT Championship. Wrestling against Jinder Mahal there. Roman Reigns' NXT debut. I can't see because of the crease, because of where the disc goes on there, but pop out disc 2, and then you get to see a lot of the things. They jump right in to the WWE run, going up against Team Hell No, and I believe a Ryback in the TLC match. Then you have Ambrose versus Kofi Kingston in that United States Championship match where he wins the gold for the first time. What is this? Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins against Team Hell No. Then we have Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns against the Usos. More with the Usos and the Real Americans, and something about Rey Mysterio. Lots of stuff there. I can read this stuff a little bit better. No Holds Barred, 6-man elimination tag. The Shield against Evolution. Great match. The Money in the Bank match from last year. Lumberjack match from SummerSlam. Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins Falls Count Anywhere against Dean Ambrose. More on that. And then you get your Blu-ray exclusives down here at the bottom. A couple more matches that you're not going to be able to get anywhere. But in my mind, yeah, the documentary already lives on the WWE Network, but those matches on the Blu-ray are going to make it worth it. So head on out to Target, Best Buy, Amazon. I don't know if you got Circuit City anymore or wherever you pick this stuff up. Destruction of the Shield's out today. It's a DVD, Blu-ray, released Tuesday. Head on out and pick this up. Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you. Tonight, the WWE Network aired Greatness. It was easily one of the best documentaries that WWE has put on the WWE Network so far. This, by far, is something that I would have loved to gone down to the Best Buy and picked up this 1-hour documentary with a few of the Shield matches from the past and felt that I got my money's worth. Easily, this was worth my month of WWE Network alone, the $9.99 a month. I get a lot of comments on my videos saying that I'm very pro the WWE Network, that I basically plug it in every video and give everybody reasons to like it or whatnot. But easily, I came home from work knowing that I was going to watch this, and I was very, very enthused that I was able to get through this, and it was a very good, very well thought out documentary that just basically built up the Shield, tore them down, and showed them where they are in the WWE and what to think they're going to be in the foreseeable future. For this, basically, it took all three guys as an individual. They laid out a platform of being able to show you who they are, where they came from, what got them to the WWE, and just put the building blocks together. They showed all three guys with big time promise of becoming the next big star of the WWE, but showed that all of them had to overcome something while going through the training process, where it could have been hit or miss on these guys of never ever making it to the WWE from FCW or NXT at the time. The DVD, or it wasn't even a DVD, I apologize. The documentary started off talking about Seth Rollins, about how basically he came up through Ring of Honor. He was a guy who was picked by Gabe Sapolsky in order to be like the guy of Ring of Honor as Tyler Black. As I first would hear about Ring of Honor back in 2010, he was the champion at the time. I've heard stories from Freaking Yeah 88. I remember watching his video talking about his WrestleMania 26 trip. I believe the show was called Rise to Ashes or something close to that. Basically, he said Tyler Black was the champion at that time, and that was one of the first times that I had heard about Ring of Honor, and that was sort of like my first exposure to that. Seth Rollins talks about being Tyler Black. He doesn't say the reason why he was in Phoenix, Arizona was basically because he was with the Ring of Honor, but he went to the show WrestleMania 26. He went there as a fan. I know that, you can go there and see a lot of the other indie wrestlers. Chris Hero was a guy that we saw at the Hall of Fame, and we saw at the WrestleMania. That was at WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. But basically, Seth Rollins watched that show in Phoenix, WrestleMania 26, and he said that basically this is going to be the last WrestleMania that I attend as a fan watching from the crowd. He said he was going to do everything in his foreseeable, power, that he was going to make it to WWE. They weren't actively looking for him, but basically he started pursuing WWE to the point of basically one day he called up and left the message for John Laurinaitis that said basically, I'm at the end of my rope here in Ring of Honor. I've done everything that I can do. I need you to call me back and offer me a contract by tomorrow, or I'm going to sign with the other guys. And as he said the other guys, he kept on sort of, pointing his head towards, the other direction, basically making you imply that it would be TNA Wrestling, who, easily could have picked him up. Maybe he would have been a big star for TNA. Maybe he just would have been a guy that just sort of fell through the cracks and we never saw again. There was a few other Ring of Honor guys that came in to TNA that basically they just chose not to use. Dave Meltzer talks about one of the biggest stars in New Japan. I think it was Okada. I can't remember who it was, but he always sort of brings up the point that, TNA had him. They brought him in. They used him for about 6 months. They never really figured out what to do with him. He had one good match on television, and they just let it dissolve. They just let it go. And here he is now, one of the biggest wrestling stars in wrestling, and he has it on his resume that he was in TNA, but you bet you $20 that most people that watch TNA didn't even know he was there. Basically, Seth Rollins, because of that phone call with John Laurinaitis, he did get his call back, and he was brought into FCW. He openly says that once he got to FCW, once he was in developmental, he knew he was the best guy in developmental. He knew he was the best they had to offer. So he sort of got to the point where he didn't understand why he wasn't getting pushed up to be on the main roster. And every day he was having words in and out with Terry Taylor, who was running developmental at that time. And Terry Taylor basically tells a story of, just because you show up and you're speaking French, we all speak English. And just because you keep speaking French doesn't mean we're going to get used to it and we're going to start understanding it. Basically, he was trying to preach to Seth Rollins that WWE has been working a certain style and doing things a certain way for so long, and it works. They're the number one company. Seth Rollins needs to adapt to WWE and basically, form up into what they've been making, which is sort of weird because I think the Performance Center and I think FCW and NXT has the shells of being something very, very good, but FCW, for what it's been, hasn't really been pumping out stars. They've sort of been pushing out the same guy over and over and over again. We got The Miz, and then we got Alex Riley, and they've had Big Guy, and they had Mason Ryan. It just seems like they kept pushing the same guy out there over and over and over again, wondering why this isn't working. And it just seems like because they keep making superstars the same way over and over and over again, and guys don't work, and yet they keep repeating the same thing over and over again. But basically, Triple H has to come down because Terry Taylor says, you're going to have to take him and put him on your main roster, or I'm going to have to ask you just to let this guy go. Because it's just not working. It's not worth us fighting amongst each other anymore. So Seth Rollins sort of got labeled as a guy who had a bad attitude, and sort of got a talking to from Triple H. He said, if I have to come down here again and I have to talk to you, it's over. I can't put Terry through this. I can't have this in my company. We all got to be on the same page, or we're not going to be on the same page at all. And that was the moment that it started to click with Seth. And he sort of got to this point of, he was the champion, and he was doing what he was told, and he was just having to wait until he finally got his spot. Then they started talking about Dean Ambrose. about how he came from the middle of Ohio near Cincinnati. Basically, he was a big-time wrestling fan who just collected wrestling tapes and did tape trading and magazine reading. He just had to get his hands on basically anything that was wrestling, and he was just soaking that in. He knew he wanted to be a pro wrestler. He didn't really know where to go. And, basically he got a flyer for a wrestling show, and at the bottom, it just had a little advertisement for Les Thatcher's School of Wrestling. And he said that is the place that he was going to go, that he was going to learn to become a wrestler. And he went there, and he started to pick things up, and he started to really realize that he was going to be a big star. They talked to Daniel Bryan, who remembers wrestling him for the first time in CZW, and knowing, this guy is really, really good. From there, he hooked up with Dragon Gate USA, and Gabe Spikolsky was there again, talking about they didn't really know how they were going to use Dean Ambrose. They didn't really know how he fit his company, but they knew how good his promos were, and basically they were just going to bring him in and just let him just speak on their shows, because they knew they made it 10 times better. It was Joey Mercury who reached out to Dean Ambrose and asked him if he wanted to be a WWE superstar. He brought them in, and once he came into FCW, he realized that basically it was WWE that realized they had never had anybody like him before. They never really had a talent like this. They didn't really know how to train him. They didn't know what to do with him. There was a long point when he wasn't even being used on NXT television. He wasn't being, put up to the main roster. He knew that he had a lot of talent. WWE knew they had a lot of talent. Everybody was telling him that he was doing everything right, but they just didn't have a spot for him. And he was going stir crazy to the point where basically it seemed like he wanted to get out of WWE just because of the fact that they just weren't using him, even though that he knew he was somebody that really could, asset the company. That led to just basically he had to overcome the fact of just waiting for this spot to come, and that would come later. Then from there we go to Roman Reigns, who was a football player. They went to the school together with his whole family. They laid the whole lineage out of basically his father was part of the tag team, the Wild Samoans, and basically because of the way it all works together, I think he said his cousins were the Usos, and they played high school football together, where they were the 3 linebacker cores, which seems like Jimmy, Jey Uso, and Roman Reigns all on the same line. That quarterback's fucked, and you're not running that ball anywhere. He finished, he was second in All-State in linebacking, for his state. I don't know where he went to school, if it was in California where it was, but that led to him getting a full ride to Georgia Tech, where they used him as a lineman, I believe is where it was. And from there, that led to him being I think he said first team all SEC. And, he ended up, taking that, and he got drafted. I didn't hear what team drafted him, but they ended up releasing him, and then he had to, figure out, did he want to go to Canada and try and see if that was going to work. And then basically he decided to quit his dream of playing football, because that means he would have to leave his daughter behind, and he wasn't going to be able to spend time with her while he was going to football to try and chase his dream, where he wasn't making any money. So he came home and he started working 9-to-5s, and basically his dad was the guy who came to him and, talked to him about the business, figured out it was time to get him in, and they sent him down to FCW. John Laurinaitis talks about getting him in there, and it doesn't seem like they signed him for much, and they didn't seem like they thought they had a whole bunch with him. They thought that he was really, really green, and that he was going to need a whole lot of, sort of molding together, but they were able to figure something out for him, and he just came in, and everything they asked him to do, he just kept on picking up on it faster and faster. And the thing that he had to overcome while being in developmental was just not knowing anything, and just having to basically learn a whole new trade of being a football player to them. Once they get to WWE, this is mostly about their developmental. This is mostly about, what got them to the dance. It jumps right into them sort of being the defenders of CM Punk. They come in during the Survivor Series main event where they put Ryback through the table, and that leads to them having their debut match where they're basically asked to steal the show on a TLC pay-per-view where they're going up in a TLC match against Team Hell No and Ryback as a team, and they show them picking up Ryback and putting him through a table once again. It jumps really fast. It sort of shows them winning the United States Championship, and it shows them winning the Tag Championship at Extreme Rules. No real mention to the WrestleMania match, and then it jumps almost to the point where they turn on each other on Monday Night Raw after Payback, and then it shows them all getting ready and training for SummerSlam. It shows Seth Rollins, flying in from that San Jose show on his private jet. Or they said the WWE private jet, sort of making it seem like he's with the Authority. It's very kayfabe. They don't really... when they talk about Seth Rollins, he's always Seth Rollins. He's never Tyler Black. When they talked about Dean Ambrose, he was never Moxley on the independent scene or anything like that. So it's basically sort of like keeping it like it's the same guy, and the storylines are together. They talk about them working for other companies, but they never really mention who else they are. But honestly, when it comes down to it, the WWE has put out two separate documentaries. They've done the Warrior documentary, and they did the Daniel Bryan documentary. Honestly, in my mind, I'm going to say that this Shield documentary was better than anything else they've ever done. This by far, if you're in England or the UK and you don't have the WWE Network and you have to wait a few more months, this is what you want to watch first once you get it. Because as far as I know, this is the only way to get it, unless you know how to torrent things online or somebody's going to put it up along the way. But Journey to SummerSlam, the Shield, was badass shit. Basically, it showed you the breakup of the Shield and how they put it all together and everything like that. But 10 stars on this one. 10 stars on a 5-star scale. I thought this was perfect. Thumbs up to everybody involved. Thank you, WWE Network. Good stuff.